welcome to the Tall Family Theater, a nonprofit organization that exists because of your support and generosity. Tonight you'll be watching Fantastic Fungi, the very first show in our 2020 Science on Screen series. We all hope that you pick up a flyer for the Science on Screen and all of our special programming on your way out. To introduce the magic of mushrooms, I would like to introduce Ann Berger, Vice President and Education Chair of the Western Pennsylvania Mushroom Club, a fabulous photographer, and above all, a die-hard fan of fungi. Generally, we wait until after the presentation for questions, but Anne would prefer if you pop up your questions and ask her as she goes along. And myself and Cece right over there will be running mics along as soon as you have a question. After her presentation, we'll be skipping the trailers and jumping right into the movie. So we ask you to take this time to please silence your cell phones and do us a big favor and enjoy the shows. Now, come on up. Miss Ann Berger, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
It's really good to be here this evening, and I am excited to speak before such a terrific crowd. So if you do have any questions, thank you. If you do have any questions, please raise a hand and someone will be along to help you out. We're all here, hopefully, because there is something about mushrooms. They're quite fascinating. Yes, woo! So you're walking along, say in the summer, it's a nice July morning, and you're walking along and you see something like this, and you say, whoa, look at that mushroom. And then farther along in your hike, you might see something more like this along a hillside, and it looks kind of like flowers, maybe? Or farther along still, and you come across something that looks like maybe it should be on a coral reef somewhere, but not at the base of a tree on your hike. And you might wonder, are those mushrooms? What are they? I'd like to spend the next 15 minutes or so talking about what are mushrooms and what are they doing there before we see our fantastic film. Here in Pennsylvania, we have over 1,000 different species of mushrooms. There are many edible species. I've eaten between 40 and 50 different kinds of wild mushrooms. There are several poisonous mushrooms out there. One of the cool things that you learn when you start looking for wild mushrooms is which ones are poisonous so that you don't make the mistake of eating them first. There are a few deadly mushrooms. Even more important to learn first. They're not hard to learn either, and there are only a few. So once you learn those, you don't have to worry about if you're interested in eating them. You won't have to worry about what you're eating. There are 3 functions that we know of so far. Mushrooms are still it's still quite early in our research of mushrooms, so we may even find out that there are more functions that mushrooms provide for the economy and the ecosystem. But for now we know of 3. Mycorrhizal mushrooms form a symbiotic relationship between themselves and trees in the environment and plants as well. Not only do they attach their growing, what are called mycorrhiza, to the roots of the trees, but they also connect tree to tree and help the trees to communicate with one another. They also pass nutrients back and forth between themselves and the tree, and helping the tree to be most efficient in taking in nutrition. Again, if you have any questions or I said something that didn't make sense to you, please raise a hand. The next type of mushroom that you'll find out there quite often are the saprobes. They break down dead organic matter so that it can go back into the soil and be ready for the next generation of plants or fungi. A third type of mushroom that are pretty exciting to find are the parasitic mushrooms. These grow on trees, and unfortunately they do kill the trees. There are weaker parasites that grow on trees as well, and these will grow over and over year after year, where a mushroom like this is a honey mushroom, if that grows on a tree, the tree will die within 2 years. Parasitic mushrooms also grow on insects. They also grow on other mushrooms. They even parasitize people. But the type of mushroom that parasitizes people is called athlete's foot fungus. So you will not be having any mushrooms growing on your toes. So we have 4 seasons of mushrooms in Pennsylvania. We also have all year round mushrooms in Pennsylvania. So if you go out in the spring, you will find morel mushrooms. In the summer, you'll find Cortinarius and many, many other hundreds of different kinds of mushrooms. In the autumn, you will find sheep's head, hen of the woods, and again, other autumn mushrooms. And in the winter, they call velvet foot. Velvet foot will grow any time that the temperature is above freezing. And it doesn't mind poking its head up through the snow, obviously. There are other mushrooms, chicken mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, deadly gallerina. They all love to grow in the cooler weather, so you'll find them even now if you are able to get out into the forest. So I wanted to talk about what is a mushroom. What's it doing there? It performs the functions as we said, but why is it there in the first place? Like, what is it? It is the reproductive structure of a larger organism, which is a fungus. So underneath your feet, and as you'll see in the film later, underneath your feet is a carpet of fungus that you don't see because it's growing throughout the soil. It's growing in the dead wood or the dead plant matter. And we only know that the fungus is there when it sends up a mushroom. And the mushroom does the work of producing and releasing the next generation of fungi in the form of spores. Spores are microscopic, so you cannot see individual spores, usually. However, you can make a spore print. And if you come to a mushroom meeting, we'll tell you how to do that. The most familiar mushrooms that we all know of are the cap and stem mushrooms. You'll see these as you walk along. You'll have these in your mulch, out in the forest, along the trails. I encourage you, if you are out in the forest and you come across a mushroom, feel free to interact with it. Pick it. Take a look at it. What does it feel like? Does it feel like leather? Does it feel suede-like? Is it slippery? Mushrooms invite interaction. Smell it. Mushrooms, some of the mushrooms that you'll find out in the forest smell lovely. Some smell like a garbage truck, but still, they all have their own individual smell, and if you're learning how to identify mushrooms, smell is one way to do that, as well as the texture, as well as do they have gills or do they have pores when you flip the mushroom over. So you cannot get poisoned by picking a mushroom or by smelling a mushroom. They are very safe to handle, very safe to interact with for children, adults, for everyone. The next type of mushrooms I'd like to show you, and again, we have all these mushrooms in Pennsylvania. These are the coral fungi and the club fungi. There's a parasitic mushroom right up here. That is growing, it looks like it's growing on wood, but the trick to that one is to dig underneath those little clubs and get behind them and discover that they're actually growing on a moth chrysalis. And they are using the moth as food, and their spores will mature on those tiny little holes. You can see the tiny little spots on it. The spores will mature. All of these, the spores, instead of having gills and a cap, the spores will grow on the branches of these, and then when the spores are mature, they'll just be available for the wind to take them away. Another type of fungi, we have about 4 more slides with different types of fungi. These are called cup or jelly fungi. And each of these produce their spores inside the cup of the mushroom or on the outside. So for the jelly fungus, the whole entire outside of the fungus will produce little spores as it matures. It's a great thing to do with your family. If you get a chance, if you see these, the brown cup fungus, you get down close to it and you give it a little puff. Wait about 1.5 seconds after you do that and watch it shoot spores up into the air. It is so fun. And once you do it one time, your kids are going to want to do it then. And they'll be, poofing out little mushrooms all over the place. So that's in spring. Springtime, those will be out and about. I like this one. I like it's called a devil's urn. But I love how symmetrical it is. And that is one of the earliest spring fungi to arrive. Another category of fungi grow their spores inside of a closed capsule. And when the spores are mature, a hole develops in the top of the capsule where the spores will shoot out. Why is it different than a cup fungus? Why is it different than a guild fungus? That's part of the fun of the research that we're trying to get people to do. Puffballs and earth stars. You know what? You probably have the bird's nest fungi. They're very tiny, but they love mulch. So if you have mulch in your yard, tomorrow when you're outside sometime, just walk around and see if you happen to notice just little round circles and get down close and check. They may be bird's nest fungi. I wanted to tell you, let's see, if you're handy with a camera, it's a great hobby because they don't move like birds. Birds are so frustrating to try to get pictures of. But you can walk around mushrooms and set your camera up, and if you don't like that, you can move it around and until you get just the right angle for your photo. So it's a great hobby, and all it costs is your iPhone. You already have a camera. Another great mushroom to become involved with are the polypores. Polypores, of course, mean many pores. Their pore surface is underneath the bracket of the mushroom. Oh, do I still have that here? It's here. I have a bracket fungi here. This is called a crack cap fungus. And one of the cool things about some of the polypores, they're very hard. The bottom surface of them is kind of flat, and you can actually paint on them. So I'll probably have this out afterward on our sales table just for you to take a look at. Someone's painted a lovely picture of a raccoon and a forest on this. But there is another polypore fungus that you can draw on a beautiful white surface underneath. With your fingernail or with a nail or anything with a little bit of sharpness to it, and the drawing will stay for decades afterward. Once you bring this fungus in and let it dry, kind of like this one, nice and dry, it's indefinite. You'll have that photo, and if you're an artistic person, I encourage you to try something a little new with that. Another thing that people are doing with fungi that they'll talk about a bit in the film, they're looking at them for medicinal uses. One of them we have here in late summer. It's called hen of the woods, or maitake. In Japan, maitake is a very expensive mushroom. They can be as big as 35 or 40 pounds, some of them. They're very tasty. You can dry them. People love hen of the woods. There are several, well, actually, all of these mushrooms are edible at various stages before they get overripe. So it's a fun fun hobby to get into if you like to cook. If you're interested in family, get out in the woods and enjoy a family time. If you're artistic, if you're into scientific research, we'll talk about that in a little bit here. To get started, if you have not ever gotten started with studying mushrooms, mushroomexpert.com is a very exciting website. Michael Kuo is the webmaster there. He is an English professor near Chicago, and his sense of humor is wonderful. His descriptions of the mushrooms are very easy to read, so I definitely recommend that website, as well as Wood Decay Fungi by Gary Imberger. Also an easy read. So, and he has a shape key. So if you find a mushroom and it's shaped like a coral or it's shaped like a bird's nest, he has those shape keys that you can start there. So it's a great place to start. If you are already interested in fungi and maybe you already love to take pictures, I recommend iNaturalist.org is a site where you can post your photos. It doesn't have to be of mushrooms. It can be flowers or insects or frogs or whatever you like to take photos of. But of course, mushrooms are the best. And so I love posting. I think I have around 3,000 posts on 2,000, 3,000 posts on iNaturalist.org. I love it. And then Mushroom Observer focuses specifically on mushrooms. The taxonomists love that site. They get into big discussions about this and that and the other thing. A great place to learn. If you have a mushroom, you say, what in the world is this? They'll tell you. And if they don't know, they'll get very excited because they want to know. Even further along is the North American Mycoflora Project. They are committed to collecting specimens from across our country, drying them and saving them for research, however many thousands that might be. So it's pretty exciting to be a part of that. Now, of course, the best way to learn is with someone else who already knows fungi. So I do encourage you to join the Western Pennsylvania Mushroom Club. We meet from March through November on the third Tuesday of every month. So it's not a huge time commitment, but there is always a mushroom table at every meeting where people are identifying mushrooms. Because there are lots of mushrooms out even today. You can go out and easily find 10 different kinds of mushrooms. So there are always mushrooms to look at, always mushrooms to interact with, as well as people who know what they're doing. Did I mention dyeing with mushrooms? I didn't. So you can dye fabric with mushrooms as well. So not just if you're artsy with drawing, but also craftsy. You can dye fabric and yarn with mushrooms and get all kinds of different colors. So that's something that I learned from the Mushroom Club. I thank you so much for coming this evening. I hope you love the film. Do you have any questions? I'd love to answer them. Yes, he's coming with the microphone.
I missed your introduction, but this was fantastic. Thank you for your
Oh, you're
energy.
welcome.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Did you know that there's going to be a 17,000 square foot mushroom built in Beaver Falls?
No, 17,000 square feet.
If you would take the mic.
Oh boy.
Well, I guess I got set up. A Portobello building, Mycelia Development is the real estate company that I started, and we're doing a cultural life and art center. And it's all inspired by root structure of mushrooms because they're all about community, and I think we're going to learn about that tonight.
Yes.
20 of us are here because we're just pretty excited about mushrooms.
Wonderful. It's great to hear that there is a group in Beaver County that is interested in mushrooms because Allegheny County is a great place to study mushrooms, but boy, Beaver County, yes, get into it. How about another? Yes. I guess we wait for a mic. Down here we had a couple.
I might be loud enough. I may have missed it because I stepped out for a little bit. But are there any mushrooms that kind of take on two different shapes in their stages?
Yes, there are anamorphs and teleomorphs. So wow, that's heavy stuff. Yeah, there are. And when we do have those, they're pretty fun to find because they are different shapes and they have the same name. They used to call them different names, but now they actually have the same name for both the weird types. Yep. Yes.
That's news to me. So what do they look like? What are they like?
What the anamorphs and teleomorphs? Well, the anamorph is just a different shape of the same mushroom. So the teleomorph is the regular mushroom, and the anamorph is a slightly different. I'm trying to think of one. Okay, there's one called. They changed the name. Sorry, they changed the name of it. It looks like a little burnt out match. So it's about an inch high, and it grows on dead wood. And it looks like a little burnt out match, and that's the anamorph. But the teleomorph is actually a little cup fungus. And sometimes you'll find them side by side. Sometimes you'll just find the anamorph, the little burnt out match one. Yes?
Variations on a honey mushroom be considered that? Because it is variable form.
It does. There is a variable on a honey mushroom. So we'll have to talk about that. There are different colors and things of fungi, but I wonder if you're thinking of the aborted form of the honey mushroom. We'll talk to me after. Yes.
Could you say a little more about how mushrooms help trees communicate with each other?
You know what? That's what they're going to talk about in the film, and that they're spending quite a bit of time on that in the film. So I couldn't do it as well as they can.
I looked at the mulch one day,
Yes.
and I had a mushroom that was about 9 inches high.
Oh boy.
And it looked like it came from another
They do.
galaxy.
Right?
And it was slightly shady looking, if you get my drift. Well, you know, I'm being nice. And what is this thing?
I'd have to look at. There are several interesting fungi.
And I threw it over the fence.
Yeah, well, yes, don't be violent with our mushrooms. No, I know they do freak some people out. There's one that they're going to show you in the film that I have never seen yet in the wild. Oh, one more minute, okay. And they'll show it actually coming up out of the ground. One more.
I once had like a leak or something in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And this is back in California, this is a while ago. And a mushroom popped out and started growing. What kind of mushroom is that? That could be anything.
It could be, well, there are mushrooms that like to grow in houses, but I don't know, I can't tell you exactly what one it was. Well, they love moisture, and so anywhere that they can find moisture and nutrients, they will grow. So.
I don't know if people realize a lot of times you will find these little black dots on your siding or on your car, and that's artillery fungus, and it's just about impossible to
get off,
remove
yeah.
from the housing or your thing. But that's actually a fungus.
Thank you so much. I think we're getting ready to show the film. So thank you for your attention. Enjoy.